Hey guys, welcome to the Everyday Leader Podcast. Today's episode, we're interviewing our very own Matt Herrington and his partner, Jacob Crockett. Together, they've been developing a new tool using the latest technology to help businesses and employees find the best fits culturally and for their values. This tool could revolutionize the way people are hired across many industries. They've got an amazing story on how simple conversations and ideas have bloomed into this beautiful new project. They've got it in the hands of businesses already and are having amazing results. Stay tuned to hear how this project has come to fruition.
Welcome to the Everyday Leader Podcast. Leadership is a choice. Join me, Matt, and my co-hosts Drew and Tate each episode as we break down how to lead powerfully in your family, team, and organization.
Hey guys, welcome to the Everyday Leader Podcast. Today, we're actually doing kind of a special episode featuring one of our very own, Matt Herrington, and his partner, Jacob. They've been working on a really cool project together that could be really impactful for a lot of companies and addressing one of the struggles that as business owners, employers, we all face in some form or fashion. So Matt, Jacob, thanks for being here, guys. I'm going to turn it over to you a little bit, here initially, and tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Tate. Obviously, for our listener, you're used to hearing my voice, and we're happy to have Jacob here with us. So, Jacob, why don't you tell us a little bit about two things? A little bit about who you are, and then secondarily, just tell us a little bit about your view on leadership, or we could also call it like a little bit of your leadership journey, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. So, I'm Jacob Crockett. I've been working on building out HireAligned is the company that Matt and I have been working on. I feel like Matt's going to give me all the softballs, so I have spent most of my career in data science, before AI was cool, and really figuring out how can we use data and technology to provide actual value, right? When I graduated from college and started working, after a couple of years, I ended up in a group where there were a ton of really academic people, and we'd spend a lot of time and consequently a lot of money, like looking into random things, like, hey, what crazy thing can we do in health? And some of it was really useful, but a lot was kind of a waste of time, in my opinion. And so I really started to think, okay, how can we use this technology and resources to make big impacts? And so, I started working kind of as a one-off data scientist doing research mainly in healthcare related areas, then moved into running teams and building out teams, helped to start a company within United Health Group, and then helped to start an incubator, and ran all of the data teams, and then eventually stepped down from that to run one of the companies in the incubator. And then when that fizzled out, it burned really hot and then exploded one day. Matt and I had been talking for a while about, what created really meaningful, what creates a meaningful life, but also how do you create really meaningful work and be actually aligned with what you're doing and the people that you're working on. And, I, in kind of venting to him, was like, hey, I don't think it's possible to find somewhere where you're truly aligned with what you do. And he kind of challenged me to, he's like, well, if you can't find it, you should make it. And so we noodled on that and kind of just let that simmer for about 6 months. And then, after a couple other conversations, we were like, hey, let's build it. And so we've gone all in on this tool that, helps measure what the culture is of the company, and then benchmarks candidates against that, to both, help companies find better people who are more aligned with them, and then also help the candidates find companies that they're a good fit for. Really kind of following some deep rooted beliefs that, if you're aligned with what you're doing, life just works. It works, and it feels like magic, and then you don't have to, I know we're talking about leadership here, then you don't really have to do the traditional, ideas of leadership of, cool, let's what are you going to do this week? And let's check in. And, if you didn't do it, we're going to slap your hand. And if you did do it, we're going to like give you a carrot or whatever. And like it
don't want
makes
to
it so
interrupt
it's
you,
all
Jacob,
so
but
much better. No, interrupt me. I've been rambling now. So
I think we would define that as management, not leadership.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyways, go ahead.
No, that's great. Right. And so, that's really the magic we're trying to bring about in the world, is helping companies and people shift the way that they lead, ultimately, but also the way that they work and just live their life. Because, lots of people just in the past have accepted, hey, my 9 to 5 is going to suck. And I hope the, 5 to 9 can be fulfilling. But in today's world, like, work is too hard to pull apart from your identity and from your life, because, you're just one phone buzz away from being pulled back into it. And really being able to find things that you deeply align with, it makes life so much better.
Yeah, 100%. So Jacob, tell us a little bit more about, and we can kind of shift the conversation into more like our HireAligned project for sure. And tell us a little bit more about I'll just share something about Jacob that has always occurred to me, like, since I've known him. So Jacob and I are not blood related. We're related through marriage because my wife, Kelsey, is Jacob's first cousin. So we've technically known each other for a long time, haven't interacted a ton until the last couple of years. One of the things that occurs to me about you, Jacob, is that your like view of life has always been probably more positive or like joyful or grateful than a lot of people, almost to the point where, like, in some of our conversations, some of the things that were like a breakthrough for me or like that are a breakthrough for other people, you're kind of like, what's the big deal? I've always thought that, like, I don't know what. And I think that's an amazing gift. So talk to us a little bit about that. Like, where do you think that came from? How does that, like, your view on life that has always been fairly like, positive and looking for the good, how has that played into your ability to lead? Because I know you've had a lot of opportunities to lead specifically through a role or a title, whether it be like in a company or even in your church association. So tell us a little bit about how, like, that connection, like, how has that helped you be a more effective leader, or has it?
No, I think it definitely has. I haven't thought about this for a while. But so I grew up in Minneapolis. My parents are not from Minnesota. And so we were there. I'm the second of 5 kids. Both my mom grew up on a farm more than my dad did, but still, I mean, my dad worked on a cotton farm. I don't even know if that's what you call it, if it's a farm or a ranch or whatever, but worked in high school and, all kind of very manual labor. And so growing up, my mom especially really tried to instill in us hard work. And I think that seeing the difference that and fulfillment that hard work can make was huge. That, coupled with recognizing very, very early on, I was exposed to. We didn't live in a fancy area, but we had some people who have gone on to be very successful that I had as kind of Boy Scout leaders or kind of church youth leaders, and seeing the things that actually led to fulfillment, and both in their family and careers, and then just generally in life, helped me to identify really early on a couple of things. One, just being proactive in everything, right? That, like, life becomes what you will it to be. And that takes action. And isn't just like sitting around and waiting. And so I had a scoutmaster. His name's Curtis LeClaire. He lives down there in Arizona, not too far from you guys. But he, every time we'd end a meeting or something, he'd say, be the, and then pause, and everybody had to say leader. And it's kind of cheesy at first, but eventually it wore me down, and thinking, okay, well, how am I? You don't usually go to like school or something and think, oh, how am I going to be the leader today? But really thinking, okay, what things do I want to be true about the world around me, and how can I help to make that happen? And then also recognizing, that the outcome sure matters sometimes, right? Like, do you want to win this, game? Sure. Yeah, you want to. But also that the the work and effort and journey up to that should and can be just as fulfilling as winning. And so I think those things really kind of help set me up for a just like a net positive outlook on life. I recognize also, I think I got lucky, and just I'm like a 7 to 10 all the time on like emotion scale. It's rare that I feel discouraged, but I think also recognizing that the world really is out there for the taking. And the more we can just help other people and do things in a really genuine way, everything just works. It just works.
Yeah. Are you guys seeing why Jacob and I decided to launch a business together?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you're pretty aligned.
Yeah, pretty aligned, right? Okay, so I have one
it.
comment about that though, Tate, and then I want to turn this back over to you so you could kind of like talk to us together about HireAligned. And my comment is, listening to Jacob talk, you can see that there is a lot of alignment in what we believe, and we are very aligned on like why we're doing what we're doing. We're very aligned on how we see the world and how we want to treat people and make people the focus of delivering value. And we're very aligned on like our priorities with how we want to spend our time and attention with like family and church service and that kind of stuff. And there are actually a lot of things. Well, I say a lot, maybe not, but there are things that Jacob and I don't agree on. There's things that we don't actually like see the same. They're just not the things that cause an issue as far as misalignment goes. And so I just want to point that out, that like we want to be really clear that like with HireAligned, we are helping people find what aligns with them, which does not equal cookie cutter isolation, only associating with people that you agree with 100%, only working at a company where everyone thinks the same. Like that is not it at all. And I don't know, I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, but we're taking that distinction into the world, that like alignment matters, and it does not equal sameness. It does not equal like lack of diversity or lack of, different opinions or different ideas. So I just want to point that out, that like we are very aligned and it works. And we also don't agree on everything, probably.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Just listening to it, it's funny that that's the direction you went with what you just said there, because I'm sitting here thinking, man, I could totally see Matt coming up with an idea like this, a big picture, but there is zero chance he's putting it together on the computer.
Yeah, exactly.
And making it work. Like, just not going to happen. So,
and we know Matt very well, so Tate can say that.
Yeah. So 100%. And there's another lesson in that though for the listener, right? That if you can see something to some extent, and you are also, because of your skill set or your attention span in my case, is not able to create it, go find people that can create it with you. And so it really has been one of the most fun things, is like taking what I could see in my mind, and Jacob too, like what he could see in his, and turning it into a reality has been so fun. But like I could not do that by myself. And so, I get on LinkedIn and talk about better together and da-da-da-da. I believe it. Like I love that. I truly mean that when I say things like that, because we can go so much farther and have so much more fun together than trying to do things on our own.
Well, I'm gonna have to point it out again, Matt. You could do it. You choose not to, and your strengths are in other places, which is amazing. And I love it.
Just think how much more fun it would be if you were building it too. I'm just kidding.
You get both, right?
No, I love the people side of stuff, but it's so fun to just get in and build stuff.
Yeah.
Creation mode.
And solve problems. Yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah.
So Matt's had a chance to kind of show us in different settings, kind of the tutorials, and we watched the videos. And
oh, sweet.
And so for everybody that's not completely aware of what HireAligned is, it's using AI functionality to help ask questions and engage applicants or prospective clients or customers to make sure that, hey, this is a good fit, and prints out a report, really intuitive, easy to read. And so with that, like where did this idea start? I mean, you touched on it briefly,
Yeah.
But
Well,
what was that conversation? What was that? Take us there.
okay, so Jacob did mention that like it's so funny because we have a different memory. Not that like one of us is right and one of us is wrong. We just when we talk about the inception of this idea, it's we think of it at a different moment in time, which is also fascinating, right? Like Jacob is citing this conversation we're having about when he was kind of venting to me at an organization where he wasn't feeling aligned, and that's great. My first initial memory of this conversation is actually earlier on because I remember where I was standing at the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport waiting for a flight, and I called Jacob and I said something weird like, "Dude, I haven't stopped thinking about us creating something since like the family reunion, and like I just feel like I want to act on that. So I'm calling you to tell you I want to create something, and I don't know exactly what that is." But as we talked that day, we did talk about something similar-ish to this,
Yeah.
like combining the worlds of like, okay, how do we use AI and technology and data to create a tool that can help people drive their culture, their leadership, that kind of stuff that I'm like very involved in and passionate about. So that's really the first time I remember us really talking about it was that day in the airport. And so to answer your question, Tate, that's where this started. But truly, and I don't want any listener to misunderstand me. Like I never had like some revelation or vision or dream craziness like telling me like you got to build HireAligned, right? And there was very specific recurring thoughts and inklings to like connect with Jacob, like that there's something there to be discovered, uncovered, developed. So I do recognize that, and I took action on that. And I think that that's important, that whatever those little things are that occur to you from on a day-to-day basis, think about it that way. Like if you have one random thought, which I do all the time, and then you never have it again for a month, probably not something to take action on. You know, if you have it like every day or multiple times a day recurring, I suggest and encourage you to go take action on that. Even if it doesn't end up being what you thought, you get clarity as you take the action on it. So that's really from the way I remember it, a lot of how this got started was that.
Does that sound right, Jacob?
No, oh, for sure. Yeah, it was not a like one conversation. It was probably, I mean, right, memory is a fickle thing. But like it probably wasn't, it wasn't just one thing. I can remember where I was when we were having that conversation, and Matt was like, "Well, if you can't find it, why don't you make it?" And I was like, yeah, for years I had been planning and prepping to be like, yeah, I want to do my own thing, or be able to work somewhere, and just like saving up money to be able to say, cool, I want to work on something and I don't have to get paid for a little bit. Um, and right, it's like right in front of Thanksgiving Point on this sidewalk in Lehi, Utah, that I was walking, and on the phone, and I think it was that, and then yeah, it was over time thinking, okay, well, how do we do this? And like 3 years ago, what we're doing wasn't possible. You have kind of this idea of natural language processing, which in more tech terms, right, has been like an interesting thing of like, okay, can you actually help computers understand written text and not just like what it's saying, but the meanings behind the words? And that's been a really hard, complicated problem. But the advent of all of these large language models, right, like ChatGPT, and now they're just blowing up, that actually makes it so it's doable. And so the beauty of it is, you could survey people all day long and have them take personality tests all day long. And you're not going to, like, nobody can really understand what that means. And people have a hard time saying, well, these are my core values. Very few people are like, this is what resonates with me deeply. And here's what I, want to bring about in the world. Like, people don't talk like that very much. And so it's hard for them when they come to apply for a job to be able to articulate those things that help the company recognize, okay, what actually matters to them? How does that match up with what matters to us, with what we're trying to do and what we're actually doing? And so kind of some of the methodology we've done is, the best way to get at that is through stories. And so asking people to tell stories, and then you're able to use, some of this LLM technology to then pull the insights out of that to say, like, okay, they reacted this way in this situation, what's probably underneath that. And so no, it's so fun. I don't think I've ever had more fun in my adult life or in my working life I've never made less money and I've never had more fun.
Don't you love that?
Well, and for our listener, like this isn't just an idea anymore. Like you have it implemented with businesses. You have some clients now. It is growing. It is something you're working at partnering and bringing to more businesses and organizations. And maybe tell us like, what's been the experience for the users so far? What's the realizations they're having using this tool? What are they seeing like as a vision for how this can help their business or their organization really be aligned with who they hire? Like what's the experiences or any stories you can share around this so far?
Yeah, definitely. So real quick, just like a little bit of context around. So right now, the tool fundamentally does like two main things. It gathers information from existing team members in an organization to establish like a measurable benchmark for what the lived culture is and how the values are being expressed, which is pretty cool because like that's a very hard thing to measure. And ours isn't perfect and we're working on refining it every day. But that's like the first part. Once you have that, then you can engage applicants with a similar interactive conversation that's driven by AI that we've trained and developed to determine like how aligned is this potential applicant with this benchmark that we established by talking to team members and leaders in the organization. So those are kind of two different things. Like the one is valuable to just having an understanding of your culture is pretty valuable. However, we talk about it in terms of like vitamins and painkillers that like most of the market is not super interested in buying the vitamin of where's my culture and how can I improve my culture. I think that it matters to a lot of people and more so every day. And so the painkiller that people are actually engaging us on is like, I'm having a hard time finding, and hiring and keeping the right kind of people that fit in my organization. Because we all know, like all the data is out there that when you have people who are engaged and who stay and like contribute, that helps your business immensely. It also helps the humans in your business have a more fulfilled and joyful life. So those are kind of like the two sides of it. So we started this very much from the lens of like, we want to drive leadership, we want to drive culture, and we want to help people really live a more fulfilled life and have companies operate in a more like fulfilling way. We have found by talking to some of the users that it actually is an immense time saver to take like 40 or 50 applicants and send out the link to have the applicants interact with, and then get a score that says like, hey, here's the top 3 or 4 people who are the most aligned with you culturally and from a value standpoint. And then they go interview them. That saves a ton of time. So that's been the feedback is like kind of twofold. Hey, this is really cool because it saves us a ton of time. And we feel like it's helping us identify people who are going to be more aligned with our organization and our team. So.
Yeah, it's been cool to see people use it. So we had one of our customers, they're kind of a fintech company. They're hiring like 100 people onto their sales and financial advisor team this year, and they went through and they had like 40 of their team members take the team assessment. So they had the organizational benchmark, and then they went to go send out a candidate assessment link to a bunch of people who'd applied. And they accidentally sent it to like kind of the short list of their A players that they had also set aside that they wanted. And so they went through as if they were candidates and they all scored super high. And so it was a really, really kind of
cool
lucky mistake where, they messed up, but then they were like, holy crap, this thing actually worked. Like all these people scored super high. And then it's been cool because some of those managers who've been, they're hiring for their teams and it's like a full-time job to hire people. They're like, hey, this is way faster. And it's identifying some of the same people that they would. The nice thing though, that a lot of them don't realize is like interviewing and just the human perception of what's going to do well is so bad, like horrific. And so we're able to take out some of the bias from those initial screenings. And even with a lot of jobs looking at like, okay, what does their resume say? Like, great, that may matter, but for a lot of jobs, it doesn't really matter what your resume says. Like, can you work hard and figure stuff out? Great, you can probably do good at this. And so just having people come in and tell their stories through these assessments, and then we're able to identify, okay, how good of a fit are they, has been really cool.
That's really interesting. I've had a conversation with several people just having a sales background. I haven't had a resume since high school. And I think we're like moving into this world where a resume, not to say there's not a use for it or there's not circumstances where a resume is important, but we got another guest on the podcast. And I think like a resume doesn't tell you what you want to know anymore about somebody, other than maybe they've had experience or not, but it doesn't tell you, hey, this is what's important to us, or this is, yeah. So I love that you guys have built a tool that can help solve that problem.
Yeah.
What's funny is I think back around the time that Matt first mentioned this idea to me that he, and I think around that same time frame, I had even reached out to him to ask him if he knew of any good trainings for people doing interviews. And it was amazing because I looked around for a while, and it's amazing how there's just not much out there. Like, how do you teach people how to do interviews? Because it's all our perception, our gut, our in a single interaction or maybe a couple interactions. And yeah, it's really hard because even when we've had panels, we all leave the room and everybody's thinking or saying something different. One person loves them and the other person's going, oh no. And you're going, oh, okay. What do I do with that? And so,
yeah, it's tricky. So probably 5 or 6 years ago now, I hired a guy to be a data scientist, and he had just finished his master's in psychology. And he raked me over the coals when we were hiring a new team member. And I was like, hey, can you interview them? Give me your thoughts. And he was like, yeah, like, where's your route? Like, what are you going off of? And I was like, well, here's a couple questions I like to ask. And he's like, look, good interviewing is you have a rating for these different things. And he's like, it's not just, okay, how like teamwork 1 through 3. It's like, you literally have to have every single number defined. Like, what is a 3? What is a 2? What is a 1? He's like, because everybody has all like wildly different ideas of what good is. And then even you get on a panel and right, like the traditional response is that, the interviewee walks out of the room and everybody's like, how'd you think? They're like, oh yeah, like he was great. I think he'd do well with the team. And it's like, okay, why? How? And it's like, oh, just like got good vibes. Like seems like he'd mesh. And it's like, that means nothing. And probably is just leaning towards a bias of like, yeah, it's somebody, you'd want to like hang out with, not somebody who's actually going to do well on your team. And so it's tricky. It's really tricky.
Yeah. No, there's a ton of bias that exists. And I think that one of the remedies people have discovered is doing a panel. Like that can really help because like I've heard people say, one of us could miss something, but 10 of us aren't. And so I think there is truth to that. And that can be like a really wise way, especially on like a close, tight-knit team. You're going to want to like interview by panel. However, bias is real. We all know it and we can identify some of it. And some of it, it's so subconscious, we don't even see it. And if you have multiple people, you actually multiply the bias. Like if there's 3 people, you've multiplied the bias 3 times because everyone has their own bias that's coming into consideration. So it really does help with that too. It helps eliminate bias and focus on like, again, not the sameness, like not are these cookie cutter people that think like all of us. It's, are they because we created this very specifically. Are they aligned with why we do things as an organization? Are they aligned with how we want to treat people and people to be treated here? And are they aligned with how we want to prioritize our time and attention as an organization? And when you have alignment in those 3 areas, it generally is going to work a lot better. When there's misalignment in even one of those, that's where you get that friction that just like they start looking for another job.
So on that, Matt, real quick, can you give us like an example of, what those core values would look like off of the baselining and what they would be and like what it's being compared to essentially?
Yeah. So we use those 3 categories. Like when we're scoring, it'll show a score for each one of those, like on a scale of 1 to 10. So they could be like a 9 on purpose, a 7 on people, and an 8 on priorities, for example. And again, we chose those on purpose because of the research and because of our experience shows that when there's alignment in those areas, it's going to work a lot better. And when there's misalignment in those areas, that's what's going to cause the friction. That even if someone's super aligned with like the purpose of an organization and the way people are treated, if the priorities are not aligned, you're going to have friction, right? If the company's over here saying like, well, we just expect you to have your phone with you all the time and always be available 24/7 on the weekends. And the individual is like, no, that doesn't work for me. It would be really good to know that early on instead of like bringing them on all of the cost of hiring, onboarding, just to find out a few months later, like, hey, we're not aligned here. Like, this is not working.
Well, so can you give an example of more of like, is it terms it's looking for? Like you gave the example just now of, time. And I think that's a good one where, hey, I'm always available versus no, I stop at 5.
Yeah.
So what's the AI being trained to or identifying, that it's comparing candidates against, I guess?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of, right? If we were to have built this 4 years ago, we literally would have had to say, hey, we're looking for terms of like, collaboration, teamwork, like accountability, like things that are like one-off words and you don't know if they're saying, I hate this. And you could like match it to what's close and be like, okay, is that a positive or negative sentiment? Like that's a few years ago. Now, because of these large language models, we're able to pump in and say, hey, look, tell me about a time you were proud to be part of a team. And they tell a story. On the team side, we ask very similar questions. We're like, hey, tell us about a time you were, proud of your current supervisor. Tell us about a time you didn't get along with a current teammate and how was that resolved? And from that, you're able to pull like, okay, did the manager have to come in and like slap both their hands to make them get along? Or were they able to, are they better friends now? Or do they just tolerate each other? You're able to like pull out a lot of that information and then compare it against, okay, this person comes in and they tell a story about a similar theme or something we're looking for. And then it shows, okay, do they match the existing culture? Is it that, they also resolve things in similar ways? Or do they do things that would help lift the culture and make it better? And so it's not necessarily specific terms, but really focused around those 3 categories. What do they feel like their overall purpose is, the company and the person? How do they treat people and how do they work with people? And then how do they prioritize? What do they, is it like, pats on the back and accolades? Is it, like work-life balance? I know you guys aren't fans of work-life balance of that phrase, but work-life balance, and those types of things.
So we're getting close out of time, Jacob. We know you got to get going here in a second, but maybe a question to both of you. And I don't imagine this will be the last time we have a conversation about all this. But a question for both of you: how does HireAligned, like, how does it empower leaders? Like, how do you see this playing a role in an organization's ability to lead and provide leadership?
I think a quick way, right, is a hiring manager before has to essentially rely on their ability to hire and manage to be a good leader, right? I've hired people before that I thought were going to be amazing, and then within weeks I was like, crap, how do I get rid of this person? They're horrific. And that, I was relying on my ability to do that. Because we're exposing way more data and getting these people to tell us stories and then, being able to surface that before hiring, the leader who's bringing them into the organization has a lot more insight into who this person is and how they work. That then sets them up in a way. And then in addition, the candidate, right, we also, after their assessment, we send them a report saying, hey, look, here's how good of a fit the company is for you. And here's some things that you should look for in your next organization. By having a third-party tool tell the leader, hey, this person's solid, they're going to be good for you and your organization. And then telling the individual, hey, this company's good, they're going to be good for you. People are looking for it to work. And so it really helps the leader to shift their mindset instead of being like, oh, did I make a mistake? I need to get rid of them. Instead, it's, oh, I'm sure they're just having a bad day, and really shifting that. How do you assume the best and how do you work toward kind of more growth mindset instead of, looking for like criticisms and things. I could ramble for a long time on that, but
yeah, no, that's so good. And if you stop and think about how powerful that like prospect is, it's huge. Like if you have an individual and an organization entering into a new relationship, and both have a outside third-party validation indicating that it ought to work, that's huge. Because then, to Jacob's point, like the story they're telling themselves is like, this is supposed to work. Like, I'm supposed to be a fit here. This is supposed to be good. So as things come up, they're going to have the benefit of the doubt and look to make it work instead of look for why it can't work. So that's huge. The other thing the last thing I'll say around like, how does this empower leaders? I really believe that like when misalignment exists, that's when people management and control is deployed. That's like, and that's just our surface level reaction as a society, right? The reality is like, well, these people aren't aligned. That's why you're having to manage them. And I get that some people might listen to this and think like, well, that's like a fairy tale land. Like the world you're talking about doesn't exist. It's like, it's true. It doesn't yet. And we're creating it. Like we're creating a world where when you like that, you are engaging in things that you are so aligned with that management doesn't need to exist. And I'm talking people management. There's a place to manage tasks and systems. I'm talking people management, that like you wouldn't need to deploy all the traditional management systems of people because people are aligned. Like they're aligned with the purpose. They're aligned with the way people are treated. They're aligned with priorities, and like they can see it. They're going. And so then you can just lead. You can just be a leader. You don't have to manage people when they're aligned. And when there's misalignment, you'll always be finding yourself tempted to deploy management systems and strategies to get people to do something because they're not aligned. But when they're aligned, you don't have to get them to do anything. So that would be like my take on that and how it empowers leaders.
Awesome.
I love it. I think you guys are really creating something that's really going to change the way a lot of businesses focus and tackle this. This isn't an easy subject traditionally to navigate through. And so tools like this, I think, are just incredible.
Okay, well, just to wrap
Thanks.
up, how do we get people in touch with HireAligned? We'll put notes in the show notes so they can see your website and get a hold of you guys. But what's the best way for them to reach out if I've got a hiring problem and I need Jacob and Matt?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, HireAligned.com. Jacob's done a great job building it out. It's a really nice website, easy to navigate. So that would be the primary place. LinkedIn is where we're the most active, both from like a company page and then our individual pages as well. So LinkedIn and or HireAligned.com, which there is some confusion. This is HIRE aligned.com.
Yeah. I've made that mistake.
Yeah, and then the last plug is right. If you go to the website, we have a free tier, right? We don't want to gatekeep on what we're building, and so we have a handful of paid customers, and then an equal or more number of free users right now. And so it allows you to get in and get a benchmark on your team's culture and use it to hire somebody. And so it jump on in, sign up for a free account. Once you run out of stuff that you can do, reach out. We'd love to help you more.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Well, I'm excited to see where this goes, guys. And thank you for the time today. And I'm sure we'll be talking more.
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
for sure. Thanks, guys.
Today's the day.
Thanks for joining us on the Everyday Leader podcast. If you're ready to take your leadership journey even further, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for more insights and practical tips. And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram to stay a part of our growing community. Just follow the links in the show notes. If this episode impacted you, please help us spread the word and share the link with a friend from wherever you're listening.